This is published as a stamp in 1794 during the French Revolution, when France became the first country to abolish slavery in modern times. The woman holding the measure is representing reason, and she's demonstrating the equality between white people and black people. During much of recorded history, inequality and hierarchy were generally seen as both natural and inevitable. It was only during the 18th century Enlightenment that equality was given the benefit of the doubt, and inequality came to be seen as something that was abhorrent and in need of justification. Yet those very same thinkers who defended equality in the political and social spheres were also the thinkers who would develop a modern discourse of inequality, that of racial classification. They used physical features and background or ancestry to group human beings into a finite number of categories. And this discourse was imbued with Eurocentric moral and aesthetic judgments, where Europeans always came out on top. So in my doctoral research, I wanted to investigate the tension between these two ideas. So equality, a deepening emotional commitment to equality on the one hand, and the inequality that was associated with racial classification. So I used 3 18th century encyclopedias, 1 English and 2 French encyclopedias to investigate this problematic. I found that equality gained greater traction among an ever-broadening cross-section of European society because men and women engaged in social and cultural practices that taught them to empathize with people from another class or another culture. Here, what I have in mind is the rise, essentially, of the public sphere. So cafes, literary salons, scientific academies became increasingly diverse. So people interacted with others from outside their sort of narrow social sphere. And they learned that people who they initially thought were perhaps unlike themselves, in fact, might be their equals. Just as in the animal and plant kingdoms, an individual begins, so to speak, to grow, to endure, to wither and pass away, would it not be the same for entire species? So this is a book written by Denis Diderot. He was the editor of one of the encyclopedias that I used in my research, and it was published in 1754. In this book, he places humanity in a very long natural history. So he wanted to explain why species exist in the way that they do, using a natural historical framework. And that's what makes this book so interesting and important for thinking about race in the Enlightenment. Race would go on to have a very ugly history. It would be used to justify some of the most atrocious acts that human beings have committed against one another. But in the 18th century, we have to put that later history temporarily aside, because the way that Enlightenment thinkers used the concept of race was first and foremost to put humanity into a long natural history. So outside of the confines of a literal interpretation of the Bible. So they wanted to understand humanity as part of the natural world, as a species that has a very long history, and in which we as a species have been susceptible to the effects of climate. And this climate has introduced changes that could have become hereditary, namely changes in skin color, facial features, etc. These have all can be explained by the fact that human beings have been on this earth for much longer than most people realized up until the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment is extremely important because it was a crucial turning point in which people started to appreciate the idea that equality is something that we cannot really measure very easily. It's something that just requires our commitment. It is something that is important in a just society.